You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you, our Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us, so Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. Death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. You silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring the praise of your glory, for you are raised to life again. You have no rival, you have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom, yours is the glory, yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is. Nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares, I to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
Hey, so it's an honor to be here today with you. Truly, SNU was probably the most impactful 4 years of my life. I grew up in a small town just south of here called Tuttle, Oklahoma. Has anybody ever heard of Tuttle, Oklahoma? Okay, a few of you. So I grew up playing football, and I got recruited by SNU to come play football. And so before that, I had never really even heard of SNU. I had no connections with the Nazarene denomination. But right before I got to SNU, just a couple of months before I got to SNU, I had this experience and with Jesus that I'll never forget. And I said, okay, God, I'm truly all in. I never want to turn back. I'm all in. And from that moment on, I got onto SNU's campus 2 months later, and it was the perfect environment for me to grow up in as a Christian and to be transformed and formed into the image of Christ. And not only that, I met my wife at SNU, which was great. She wouldn't date me publicly while we were at SNU. She was too embarrassed. But the day after graduation, we went on our first date. And that's a whole other story in itself. But we started dating, and now we have a family. I think I have a picture up for you. So this is me and my wife, Courtney, and then my son, our son, Lincoln. He's almost 3 years old now. And then we are expecting another baby. So we're really excited about that. Thank you. Yes, we're super excited. Another boy, which should be interesting. Hopefully this next one, it's easier because the first one was really hard. Everyone told me like, hey, parenting's hard. It's going to take a lot of your energy. And I thought, no, it'll be fine. But it's actually really hard. And it'll kind of wear you out. And so I'll never forget, this story is relevant to what I'm talking about today. I'll never forget whenever we had Lincoln. He was about 6 months old. He would wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, and I would always sleep through it. It was a miracle. I just would sleep right through it, but my wife would wake up. And so finally, she got tired of that. And we're laying there, and I'm kind of sleeping, and I'm actually really, really asleep. Lincoln's crying. I don't realize it. So finally, Courtney just hits me. She just hits me. She's like, Jake. And I jumped, and I was like, what? What's going on? And she's like, Lincoln's awake. You need to go rock him. I was like, okay. So I'm so tired. I get out of bed. And I walk down the hall, and I'm kind of sleepwalking at this point, and I scoop Lincoln up. He's kind of crying, and I start rocking him. And as I'm rocking him, he starts to cry harder. And I'm like, what in the world? What is going on? So I think, well, I'll just rock him harder. I'm like, okay. So I just start rocking him harder. And so here he is. He's just bouncing around. And I rock him for a minute, and he just starts screaming harder and crying harder, and I don't know what's going on. And then I realized at that moment that I had picked him up upside down. And I was literally rocking our 6-month-old upside down with his arms just flailing around. And I was like, oh no. So then I put him right side up, and I get him going. But he's really upset at this point, which I would be too if I was rocked upside down. And so then I have to go back into the room, and I have to tell my wife, Courtney, I said, hey, I just rocked him upside down. And she's like, you did what? She couldn't believe it. And so then she had to go rock him anyways. She never asked me again. She never asked me to go rock him again on that. But I was really tired in that season of my life. I was running on not much sleep, right? But there's also times in our life, this is what I really want to talk to you guys about today. where we're weary. And I think that there's a difference between being tired and being weary. And this summer, I'm going to need this in just a second. This summer, I entered in this season of weariness because on June 7th, I get a phone call from my mom. And we had this camping trip planned, and I was really looking forward to it. My family likes to camp with my parents and my brother. And she says, hey, honey, I don't know the camping trip is going to happen now. Your dad, he woke up with a really sore leg, and it's really swollen. And we don't really know what's going on. It might be an infection, but we're going to have to take him in, and we're going to have to try to figure out what's going on. So I said, okay, and I'm just kind of bummed because I was really looking forward to this camping trip. But my mom takes him to the hospital. He gets to the hospital. Then a few hours later, she texts me, and she says, hey, they think that it might be sepsis because he's getting sicker as the day goes on, and I think they're going to have to take him to another hospital. So at this point, I start to get really worried. And my mom says they're actually going to take him to Shawnee. It's the nearest hospital with an ICU bed. He needs an ICU bed. So I said, wow, this must not be good. And so I go ahead and I drive out to Shawnee, and I meet my mom there. My dad's sister is there, my Aunt Cindy. And when I walk in, I realize, oh, he's really sick. He's got a mask on his face because he can't breathe really good, and he's got all these IVs in. And as the day goes on, the doctor says it's not an infection. His white blood cell count's fine. He's not running a fever. We don't really know what's going on here, but we can't get his blood pressure up. We can't get his oxygen levels up. And so I start to get more and more worried. And I can tell my dad's getting a little bit worried too. I can see it on his face. And then eventually the doctor tells us about 7 o'clock that night, hey, we're going to have to put your dad on a ventilator. And I was like, oh my goodness, a ventilator. And we're going to have to put him out, and we cannot get his oxygen level up. So I said, okay, and I kind of knew what that meant from watching COVID and stuff, that they were going to have to sedate him, and they were going to have to put a tube down his throat and stuff. So I said, Mom, I think you might want to go spend some time with Dad. I don't know what's going to look like. So after she gets done spending a little time talking to him, I go in, and I said, Dad, I love you. And he says, I love you too. And I say, you need to keep fighting. You need to keep fighting because you got 2 grandsons at home that want to see their papa again. And my brother has a son, and we have a son. And I said, they need their papa, and you need to come home. And he said, okay, I'll keep fighting. So they put him on a ventilator. And as the night goes on, he just continues to decline. And no matter what medicine they give him, there's nothing they can do. And so they transfer him to a hospital in Oklahoma City. And at about 8:15 that morning, at about 7 o'clock that morning, actually, the doctor tells us there's nothing else we can do. Your dad's not going to make it. And I just couldn't believe it. 24 hours later, he was fine, and now he's not going to make it. And so at 8:15 that morning, my brother and me and my brother's wife and my mom surround my dad as he takes his last breath. And that was it. And then I get in the car with my mom, and I drive her home. And I walk in, and everything that my dad had laid out for work the day before was right where he left it. Even his coffee mug was there, ready to go. And I think the hardest part about this all is the future that we had in mind with my dad. You know, he loved being a grandpa, and his other grandson's 3 and Lincoln's 2, and he was really starting to bond with them, and me and my dad's relationship was growing, and I just had this future in mind. And I'll never forget, somebody texted me the day after my dad died, whose dad had also died before at a young age. And she said this, she said, it's devastating to mourn the loss of a future you had in mind. And that's exactly what it was. We had this future in mind of me and my dad and going on these trips and going on these camping trips. And the day that we were supposed to be setting up our camper and setting up our tents, we were in a funeral home planning his funeral. And I just couldn't believe it. And that sent me into a season of weariness, of grief that I had never I had never experienced this type of weariness on a soul level before. And so Jesus kept pulling me back to this passage over and over again. And I had read this passage 100 times. I grew up reading it. I know this passage like the back of my hand. But now I know what it means to have a living word, where God's continuing, his word is continuing to speak into your life today. And it's in Matthew 11, and I think it's going to be on the screen. And it says this, Jesus says this. It's such a powerful, short, powerful verse, but it says this passage. It says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, some of you maybe didn't grow up in the country like myself, growing up in Tuttle, and you don't know what a yoke is. But basically, a yoke just goes around two animals' shoulders, and it distributes the weight that whatever they're carrying, so that way they can carry more weight, or they can pull more things. And so when Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you," that's what he's talking about. He's saying, hey, come alongside me, because I want to carry your burdens with you and for you. And I want to do this with you. And I can't help but wonder, my burden has been grief over the last 5 months, but I can't help but wonder what burdens you're carrying today. Because I know that you're carrying burdens. It might be a broken relationship that you have with somebody that you think, oh, this was the one, and we're going to get married, and now all of a sudden it's over. Or I'm going to get into this grad school, and now that's not going to happen. Or I don't know financially what's going to happen next. Or it's just pure anxiety and stress of this transition in your life. But Jesus says, and what I love about this passage is he says, "Come to me, all who are weary," no matter how heavy the burden is, no matter what you're going through, come to me and I'll give you rest. You're going to experience rest like you've never experienced before, no matter what burden you're carrying. Now, does this mean that it's going to be easy? And that's the question, right, that we sometimes ask. So this is like, I'm done. I don't have to experience pain anymore. I don't have to experience burdens at all anymore. And I wish that was the case. I wish this was the end of the sermon. I wish this was it. But the reality is it's still going to be hard. Whenever you think of a yoke, that's still an image of labor. There's still work to be done, Jesus says. There's still things that we need to do together to get through this. As I think about my son, Lincoln, I never want him to experience a burden in his life. I never want him to experience pain. Who would want that for their son? But the reality is I cannot prevent Lincoln from experiencing burdens in life. There will be times where it's going to be hard for him, and that hurts for me. But the most important thing isn't for him to never experience a burden in life. The most important thing is for him to know that he can always come to me. He can always come to me whenever he's experiencing a burden. I'm going to be there for him. I'm going to pick him up. I'm going to help him, whatever he's experiencing. And that's what Jesus is saying, is there's going to be work. This is a yoke that we're going to be carrying, that we're going to be tied together. But if you just walk with me, if you just yoke up with me, you're going to experience rest like you've never experienced before. And I love the image of yoke because, yes, it's an image of labor, but it's also an image of companionship, because you can't be yoked up with someone or something without being side by side. You have to walk in step. And I think that's what Jesus means by take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Because when you walk step by step with Jesus, you're learning from him. And there's been times, trust me, in this grief process over the last 5 months that I said, Jesus, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm just going to walk faster. I'm just going to get through it. I'm going to forget about it. I'm just going to ignore it. And Jesus says, no. Stay with me. Stay with me. It's going to take more time. It's going to be hard. But you're going to learn that my heart is gentle. My heart is humble. I love that Jesus gives us a window into the heart of God in this passage, because he's saying, do you really want to know what the Father is like? Do you really want to know what the God of the universe is like? He's gentle, and he's humble, and he cares so much about you that he's willing to be tied to you with a yoke and step with you every step of your journey to help carry these burdens with you. And as you do that, what you're going to experience, what he's inviting you into, is into a real relationship. A relationship where you get to know the very heart of God, and you get to experience the very nature of who God is as you're experiencing this process of carrying a burden with Jesus. I got to tell you, it's been the hardest 5 months of my life. I wouldn't lie about that. I'm not going to pretend like it's been easy. It's truly been the hardest 5 months of my life, but I have never experienced the presence of Jesus like I have over the last 5 months. Because Jesus says, come to me. Come to me. It's an invitation. But the question is, where do you go when you're weary? What do you do whenever you're tired? Because we all do something. We all do something. We all have this natural inclination when we start to feel that weariness, that deep weariness. We all do something. I think we do a couple of things, and I'm not a preachy preacher, but I'm going to get a little preachy for just a second, okay? One of the things we do is that we put our trust in the wrong yoke. We think, okay, if I try this yoke, if it's whatever it is, I can get through this. It's going to provide rest, and then I'll be done, and we'll be okay. And we get to the end of that, and we take that yoke off, and we're actually more weary than we were before we tried it. So our phones might be a perfect example, and I'm sure every preacher in chapel this year has reprimanded you for being on your phone too much. But if you think that this is going to provide you rest, you're going to find that you're going to be more weary. If you think that just distracting the burden away, if I can just ignore that I'm actually carrying a burden right now, then maybe it'll just kind of go away. And that's the yoke that we try to put on sometimes. Or we try to pretend that it's not there, and it's still there at the end of it. And that's frustrating. I get it. I've tried that. I've tried several different yokes, and Jesus says, no. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. Try this one. Try this one. You're going to find so much more rest than you ever imagined. The other thing we do, and this is what I am most guilty of, is we try to just carry it on our own. It's our pride, and we say, you know what, whatever I'm going through, if I just work hard enough, if I just keep my nose to the grindstone and I just keep working, then I can do it. I can carry this burden on my own. And then we just get so weary from that we can't do it anymore. And that's what I did for so long. I thought I'm into my pride. No one's going to tell me that I need help. I can just do this. I'm strong enough. I can do this. And that's not it. You can take the picture down for a minute. But I find myself in that place often. So what we need to do is two things. We need to do two things. One, and I love the theme this year, we need to trust in Jesus' yoke. We need to trust in Jesus' yoke. I love that trust is the theme, because trust is the foundation of every relationship. It leads to other behaviors. It leads to action, because if trust isn't there, we're never going to take that yoke. We're never going to say, okay, Jesus, okay, you're the one. This is how I'm going to find rest, because trust is the foundation of every decision that we make. It's the foundation of every relationship. And so we have to stop trusting in the wrong yoke and trust in Jesus' yoke. You'll find rest. And then the second thing we have to do is we have to submit to Jesus' yoke. We have to submit to Jesus. It's funny because when we use the word submit, we kind of think of like the 50s marriage, right? How husbands submit to your wives. It's not what I'm talking about. It's totally different. It's actually just an act of giving up control. It's an act of saying like, okay, Jesus, I can't do this anymore. I literally can't do this on my own anymore, and I have to have your help. And so then you take that yoke and you submit to it, and you say, okay, I'm in it with you now, Jesus. We're in this together. I'm going to submit to this yoke together. And then through that submission and through that giving up control, that's how we find our true rest. That's how we find intimacy with Jesus. So we have to do two things. We have to trust that Jesus' yoke is the one, that yoking up with Jesus and getting under this yoke with Jesus is going to provide rest for our souls. And then we have to submit. We have to get to a place in our lives where we say, okay, I can't do this on my own anymore, God. I'm going to lay down my pride. I'm going to stop pretending like everything's okay. I'm going to stop pretending like I can just do it on my own, and I'm going to say, okay, Jesus, you're the one. I'm going to yoke up with you. And Jesus says, okay, let's do it. Let's walk together. Let's walk together. So it may be helpful to have an image. I don't know if you're like me, but an image is helpful to remind me of things and to remember. And so there's one last story that I want to tell as Pastor Nick comes up and starts playing. And it's of my football career. So I get to SNU, and I get to this place where our first 2 seasons we were really good, and we won a lot of games. And then my junior year, we started transitioning to Division II, and it was a really hard transition for our football team. And my senior year, we literally went 0 for 11. We didn't win a single game. And that was such a hard experience for me because I'm so competitive, and I'm prideful, and I love winning. And as much as I love winning, I hate losing even more. And in our last game, my last game of my football career, we came down to the end of the game, and we were so close to winning it, but we lost. And I was so exhausted, and I felt so defeated, much like I have felt for the last 5 months. I just felt like I was done. And I was completely depleted of any energy, and I just desperately needed rest. And I see my dad off in the distance. And one thing about my dad is we were never really huggers, okay? So that my family, we just kind of like fist bump, handshake, hey. But hugging wasn't really a part of our family. But I see my dad, and I thought, I need him right now. I need him. And I need him to hold me for just a little bit. I need him to hold me up because I'm so tired. So I see him, and I walk up to him, and I just kind of fall into his arms. And I'm so tired that I can't even really wrap my arms around him. I literally just have to lean into him, and there's a picture of it right here that I love. And I'm so tired in this picture that I can't even lift my helmet up. And I think sometimes in life we get to this place. We get to a place where we can't even lift our arms up, and we just have to say, God, I need you. I need you to wrap your arms around me. I need you to hold me up. And this is active submission of saying, like, I just can't do it anymore. I can't hold myself up anymore. And I knew in this picture, I knew in this moment that everything was going to be okay. As soon as I rested my head on my dad's shoulder and he wrapped his arms around me, I felt this sense of everything's going to be okay. I know it's over. I know I'm not going to be able to play football again. I know we had a tough season, but listen, everything's going to be okay. Because I knew that I had a father that loved me. I knew that my dad loved me so much, and his heart was gentle, and it was humble, and he was going to hold me up as long as I needed him to. And I can't help but wonder if there's some of you right now that are just weary, that whatever you've been carrying is just so heavy that you can't carry it anymore. And you've never taken this step. You've never taken this step of trust, of saying, okay, God, I really can't do this anymore. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you to provide for me. I'm going to trust you to take care of me. I'm going to trust you to take care of these burdens because I can't take care of them anymore. I can't carry them anymore. God, I can't grieve on my own anymore. I can't carry that weight. And I desperately need you to hold me and to take care of me. And then what you're going to find is that there's a God that loves you so much, whose heart is gentle, whose heart is humble, who is more than willing to carry your burdens, who actually is inviting you to carry your burdens and saying, you don't have to carry your burdens on your own anymore. And so Nick, my friend, Pastor Nick's about to sing a song that I think is just perfect for what we've been talking about the last few minutes. And as he's singing, if you are ready to give up carrying your burdens on your own, if you are weary from carrying your burdens on your own, the altars will be open. Me and Blair will be down here. You are more than welcome to come talk to us about what it looks like to say, I'm done carrying my burdens on my own. I want to yoke up with Jesus, and I want to start walking with him. And I want to experience this gentle and humble heart. And what I really want and what I really need is rest for my soul. Because I can sleep, I can go find rest. I can go find rest for my body, but what I need is rest for my soul. So if that's you today, Nick's going to sing. We have a few more minutes left of chapel. Come find me or Blair. We'll talk to you about what that can look like, or just maybe even the altars or in your chair, whatever it is. Spend a little time talking to Jesus. Spend a little time giving up those burdens to Jesus because he wants to carry them with you and for you.